and welcome back to episode 5. My name is Joshua Wang and we're back with the second last episode of this series, and today we're going to be talking about a philosophy called Stoicism. Now, I don't completely agree with the entirety of Stoicism, but I feel like there are parts of Stoicism that I have used over the past 1.5 years that have just been absolutely amazing, and really I want to share it with you guys as well. And we'll start the video with the basics. Care about what you can control. And as we start off this section, if there's one thing you can take away from Stoicism, it would be this meme by Daily Stoic. And this I believe to be the most fundamental thing you can learn from Stoicism. We care about so many things in life that we kind of carry unnecessary load. We care about what happens on the news around the world, we start worrying about what other people think about us, and we start regretting on the actions we had in the past. What you need to understand is that if you can't control something, there's no point worrying about it because nothing will change. As Seneca says, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And I believe this to be the main principle of Stoicism. It's caring about what you can control and not really worrying about the things you can't. By doing this, you free up so much mental space because you're not supposed to care about the things you can't control. You can't change them, and putting your happiness or your effort into trying to control that won't really do anything. Instead, if you put your effort into the things you can control, like your sleep, your study, or your scheduling, you understand that these things can get better, and by removing the things that you can't control, you'll realize that your life will become a lot better if you just focus on the things you can control. And it's all about caring about the things that you can control. It's waking up in the morning instead of sleeping in, it's removing distractions so you can focus, and it's treating other people with respect instead of being rude. It's these things you can actually build and improve on instead of caring about whatever is happening in the world right now. The world will change and maybe it will get worse, but that doesn't stop you from making good habits, going out for exercise, and making good routines. And as you understand later on, it's stopping to think about whether you're caring about things you can control or whether you're actually thinking about things you can't control. And now we're into rationality over emotion. It's easy to feel like you've done nothing wrong in a conversation, or to resort to anger in arguments. And that's the problem of emotion over rationality. The thing is that you start to think more about yourselves rather than other people. It creates a world where you think the world revolves around you rather than you revolve around it. It's unrealistic, and more importantly, it doesn't genuinely make you happy in the end. The problem with emotion is that you believe all these external things you can't control should be in your control and should always be following what you want to do. For example, in an argument, when you're getting angry at a friend or at someone else, when you're using emotion, you're believing that the other person should always be agreeing with you, even though you can't really control what that person is saying. It's what makes it so unrealistic and really so dangerous. You start believing that you're always right and that everyone else is wrong. But in fact, when you use emotion, it really just goes to show that you're scared to change. You're scared to remove these thoughts that you already have in your head. You're scared to change this way of life that you set yourself out for. You think that instead of you going and finding what you want to do in life, that life should just come to you in this easy kind of way. Not only is this unrealistic, but it really doesn't really make your life any better. Now, to further show you the importance of using rationale over emotion, I have an analogy. So, imagine two fishermen sitting on the same place in the same pond at the same time of day, at the same time, and they spend the same amount of time fishing. One of them sits there with his rod and expects the fish to come to him immediately. He doesn't do anything, he sits there scrolling on his phone, and he complains why the fish aren't coming to his rod. The other one, on the other hand, is sitting there, he has his bait ready, he's gone home and done his research, and he's found that he can improve the things that he can control in life, the equipment he has, the tools, his patience. These are the things he controls in life, and he understands that he can get better at these things, and even though he can't control the fish, he can control the likelihood of getting more. But the problem is, the person who sits there doing nothing thinks that all these external things should just immediately come to you. The thing is, we can't control the fish. We can't control the fish if they come to your rod, if you sit there or not. But if you improve yourself, if you get better bait, better equipment, there's a higher likelihood that they'll go to your rod instead of a person who just sits there waiting for life to happen. The person who sits there doing nothing is using emotion over rationale. He thinks that the image of life he has in his head should be what happens in reality. The person who actually improves and gets better bait and better equipment understands that what he controls, the things that he does have in life, are improvable. Even though he can't control the things that life gives us, we can still improve and control our life with the things that we do have. Why, more often than not, you should be using rationale over emotion. If you're emotionally driven, you think that all the fish in the pond should just come to you without doing anything. But if you're rationally driven, you understand that you can improve the things you can control. But the most important thing that I think rationale has over emotion is that you stop caring about the things that you can't control. When you're rationally driven, you understand that yes, maybe not all the fish will come to me today as opposed to tomorrow, but if you're emotionally driven, you always think that the fish should always come to my rod regardless of what I do. That's the point with rationale, is that you understand that there are some things you can control and some things you can't. And that the things you can't control, you can kind of you can clear that mental space out so you can make way for the things you can control and the things you can improve. And that's the power of just stopping to think. As we talk about later in the episode, I love this quote from Marcus Aurelius, which goes along the lines of, ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? Going back to rationality and emotion, it's understanding, are you letting what you emotionally want overtake what is rationally needed? For example, during an argument, you might be emotionally driven to always prove your point, that I'm always right and that the other person has to be wrong. But rationally, if you just stop and listen, if you just stop to think, maybe your friend has a point. And instead of outbursting and ruining your friendship, maybe you guys can come to an agreement. That's the point of using rationality over emotion and stopping to think. And the founder of Stoicism, Zeno, has a really good quote on this. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. Now, of course, it's not some written in nature kind of thing, but the kind of understanding here is you're always asking yourself, are you letting your emotions overtake logic, or are you just, for example, in those arguments you see online, people just keep on talking emotionally. They're always trying to prove their point without stopping to consider the other person. The point is that we should stop and listen. We should stop and think about what we're saying instead of just talking. Because more likely you do that, the more likely you're doing things emotionally. And when you do things more emotionally, you're not really going to genuinely end up happy because you're not really considering the full picture. And as we go back to that example of an argument, instead of letting your emotions go loose and getting angry at the person, wouldn't it actually be even more rewarding if you kept your cool instead of bursting out in anger? Instead of fighting fire with fire, you kept your cool and you understood that you couldn't control what the other person is saying. Wouldn't that be even more rewarding than just bursting out in anger? And as we talk about now, it's having the courage to say that you're wrong. I think we've all been there when maybe a friend or a teacher goes up to us and says that we're doing something wrong, and we immediately take it personally. We let our emotions let loose, and we just kind of think that they're criticizing us, and we take it really deeply. And I love this quote from Marcus Aurelius, which really highlights the problem there. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. It is the person who continues in his self-deception and ignorance who is harmed. Because it's important to understand that when you think emotionally, you're thinking about yourself. You don't want your self-image to be harmed, and you're always trying to prove your point. You don't want to change, and you're scared of changing because you don't want to think you're wrong. It's rationally getting rid of this idea, understanding that we need to change because we want to get better. Instead of emotionally attaching yourself to who you are now, rationally understand that you can improve and change, and that isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's a really, really good thing. Instead of looking down on yourself or trying to get angry at someone else who's trying to help you. And now we're on to how do you want to see the world. Now I have another little story here which I'll share, but if you don't know me, I actually have 2 broken wrists, a funny looking shoulder that is longer than this one, and guess what? My wrist makes sounds when I move them. Now, this is not a type of bone broken, this is tissue acting weird kind of broken. So I had to go to see a physiotherapist. It definitely helped, but after a time, and still now, it hasn't really helped. I could have just sat there and been like, I'm young and free, and now everything around me is just falling apart. I could have been so emotionally driven that I think the world just hates me, and now I'm just cooked. I'm just done. But if you think rationally, understanding that just because I have 3 injuries doesn't mean I can't live my life. I can still build good habits, go exercise, and in fact recently I've been starting to go weightlifting again. The thing is that if you have this mindset of that everything around me just hates me, and that this world is just caving in on me, and that no one likes you, then you're not really going to get anywhere. But if you have this mindset called a growth mindset that you can grow and you can improve, you understand that improving isn't all that hard. For example, improving my wrists, we're just going back and hitting some weights again. Yes, it hurt a bit, but after some time, then my wrists were getting better. It's not having this mindset of taming yourself in using emotions and saying that, oh, it's all over, but rather using rationale and this understanding that obviously you can still improve. Just because you have some injuries doesn't mean you can't improve your life. Imagine we play a little game with a little coin, and I say whoever gets head wins, and whoever gets tails also wins. Now you're probably like, what? What do you mean is that? We always feel like that in life there's one singular answer, and that's the problem with arguments. We always feel like that one person has to be right. But the thing with arguments and the thing with any conversation is that the only reason why it exists is because they're both right or they're both wrong. So don't try and have this mindset or this perspective that there's only one right thing in life, because you miss out on everything else. For example, I remember I was walking home and I was having a conversation with a friend. He didn't buy a school jersey and he was thinking about how it costed too much. And the kind of understanding with money as well is that yes, you want to make money to save it and save it and save it, but if you keep on saving it, wasn't the reason you made all that money in the first place to spend it? So don't try and limit yourself with one perspective. Understand that both of them are right depending on the situation, right? Don't try and limit yourself to one perspective just because you think there is going to be one answer. If you do that, you miss out on half the things in life. The thing is that we need both perspectives because they both exist for a reason. So don't try and limit yourself with one perspective, as well as thinking both emotionally and rationally, as we talk about later. And as we finish off this last section, it's important to consider the consequences before you act. And I'll give you another story at the start of year 11. So, year 11 term 1, I had everything planned out. I thought I was going to study and then everything would go according to plan. However, for mathematics, we had this assignment we had to take home and do, and then one day I brought it to school. Then all of a sudden, all my friends took it, I started getting angry, and I dropped Eric Xiao's bag. Now, obviously, sorry to Eric Xiao, but without this incident, I don't think I would ever have gotten into Stoicism. The understanding here is that I was so emotionally driven and angry that these people had taken my stuff that I didn't rationally think that they were just going to give it back to me at the end of the lesson. And as we say later on in the episode, it's important to consider this difference between emotion and rationale. When you need to consider it, you need to think rationally before you start going angry and regretting things later on. Of course, sorry to Eric Xiao again, but the point here is that if you let yourself become emotionally driven, you will lose out on a lot of things in life. And more importantly, you will regret them later. And now on to the next section, which is that it's your life. Some things in life you can't change, so don't try to change them. Maybe genetics are unlucky, 2 broken wrists, 1 broken shoulder, dog shit sleep, and 1 massive forehead. I could have definitely used my emotions to be angry and say, why has this happened to me? But we don't control these things. So thinking rationally, you can say, what can I do about this? Instead of hating on these things and hating on why we have these things, it's about improving and rationally moving on. It's understanding that although we can't control those things, we can control the things that we do have. And as we talk about later on, there's no point in getting angry over there's no point in getting angry over something that you don't have. How can you lose what you don't have? And now we're going to be talking about making your own truth. Of course, everyone's idea of what is good or bad in their life is completely up to them. The point is, what I think doesn't have to be what you think. I don't want to make this channel this kind of guide where you must follow these things or else you're doomed or something. These are based off my experiences, and I think what I've learned over these past 1.5 years is that everyone really is very different. So don't be afraid that you're not agreeing with some of the stuff that I'm saying. Kind of like Onizuka, not everyone agrees with what he's saying. I don't really completely agree with what he's saying, but as long as you're living your life genuinely and you're genuinely seeing improvement and you're genuinely happy with yourself, that's all fine. Obviously, this is up to you. This is your life, so make these decisions on your own. Don't let other people try and tell you these different things, because remember, it's your life, only you have the right answer to whether you're happy or not. And I want to start this next part of the episode with a quote from Marcus Aurelius. Stop talking about what the good man is like and just be one. Now, with Stoicism and with almost everything in life, the more you talk about it, the more you hype yourself up to know a lot about it. For example, I remember I just know a lot about Stoicism, and I'm talking to you guys about Stoicism right now. But that doesn't actually mean you're good at it. In fact, I found recently that even though I know all these things about Stoicism, that in practice, I'm using my emotions. I mean, recently when I went to New Zealand, I definitely felt my emotions boiling up with my sister. So with anything, just because you can talk a lot about it, just because you think you know a lot about it, doesn't actually mean you do. It's actually doing the things that get you where they are. So for example, with Stoicism, just because I knew all these things about being Stoic, doesn't mean I actually was Stoic. Being Stoic is doing these things, putting them in practice. It's regularly thinking about your rational ideas over your emotions, and it's also continuously just thinking about the things that you can control rather than the things that you can't. For example, at school, there was this kid once who was always talking every day. And every time during class, he would notice stuff the teacher was talking about and he'd be acting all tough in the back. The problem here is that, yes, he was flexing, he knew all these stuff, talking out of syllabus, talking about university level stuff. But when it came down to it, when it came down to the test, he didn't get as high as he probably should have. The problem is here that when you do something that you're good at, for example, with me, Stoicism, just because you know how to talk about it or you know how to do all these other things, doesn't mean you actually know how to do it. Just like with an exam, getting good marks in exams, doing practice papers, etc., etc., etc. Just because you know a lot about the content doesn't actually translate to the test. It just seems like you know a lot about the content, so you would get good at the test. We do these things that deceive us into thinking that we are actually good at something, right? Just because I know how to talk a lot about Stoicism doesn't mean I'm actually good at putting it into practice. Same with the understanding of I know a lot about the content doesn't mean I know how to actually put it into a test situation and actually get good at it. So the lesson here is that just because you know a lot of something or just because you have an understanding in something doesn't mean you will be able to directly translate that over into something else or into something practical, because that also requires something that you may not already have. It requires you to do something different. And I feel like with talking about anything, not only Stoicism or in an exam situation where you know a lot about the content, you kind of deceive yourself into thinking you know a lot about it, so obviously a test would be fine. So think rationally again. Don't let your emotions hype you up like, oh wow, I'm so good at something. So think rationally again. Think you actually know how to do this. Like, just because I know all this content doesn't mean I'm going to be good at the test. Same with Stoicism. Just because I know all this stuff doesn't mean I'm actually good at putting it into practice. So have a little bit of think about that. And as always, put your rationals over your emotions. And as we are almost done with this section, I know this episode is going to be very long, but I want to give you a quote from Meditations, which I'll talk about later in the episode, which is Marcus Aurelius's personal journal, which is why journaling is so good for you, which is why you should be doing it as well. This is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is Marcus Aurelius's personal journal, by the way. But yeah, anyways, I'll give you guys a quote from this is the start of book 4, very famous quote, and then I'll kind of explain it as we go along. People try to get away from it all, to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You always wish that you could too, which is idiotic. You can get away from it anytime you like by going within. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. Now, the main idea of this quote is that, just like in episode 4, fear doesn't leave you until you do. Just because you go on a vacation or just because you go to the mountains or take a break doesn't really get rid of the problem. You see that we go on trips or we go on vacations, obviously, like I've heard people online, like taking a break, like to relax your mind or something, to reset. The big problem with resetting or doing these things is that you can't always go out when you have problems. If you start feeling stressed, you go on a vacation. If you start feeling stressed, you go on a vacation again. There has to be a more sustainable solution, and that is actually facing the problem. You see, emotionally, we do these things because they might feel better, but rationally, when you think about it, all you're doing is avoiding a problem. If you're facing high stress at work and you go take a vacation, when you come back, it doesn't really get rid of it. You're still going to have the same job. All you did was kind of postpone it. The point here being that you got to really think rationally sometimes. And these things, as much as it feels like accepted in society or like right in society to do these things, they don't actually solve the problem. As we talked about in episode 4, it's having the balls, it's having the courage to face these problems, to actually deal with these stresses, to rationally deal with them, that actually solves the problem at the end of the day. And I think that idea is even better explained when Marcus Aurelius says, instead of treating yourself with respect, you have entrusted your own happiness to the souls of others. Once again, going on a vacation, doing anything external, like going to a party, you are not in control of these things. For example, if you go on a vacation and then suddenly when you get there, there's a massive typhoon. Your stress could get even worse. The point being that with stress, anger, or maybe sadness, all of these things aren't improved by doing things you can't control, but they're improved by doing things you can control. For example, at home, maybe you would start making an exercise routine, maybe you start making good habits. By doing the things you can control, you are able to save yourself from stress. You are able to solve these things because you permanently understand how to do them. It's not like a one-off thing where you go on a vacation. It's things you continually build on, like a habit or a routine. And to finally end of this section, I have another quote from the GOAT, Marcus Aurelius. Are any of those improved by being praised or damaged by contempt? Is an emerald flawed if no one admires it, or gold, or ivory, or purple? Is your life suddenly better or worse if someone compliments you or hates on you? No. I remember last term when I was standing all alone by myself in a cola, as we talked about in episode 1, people called me weird. Or when I was in the library all the time, they called me a nerd. Or when I got good grades, they called me smart. The point is, people only see surface level things. Only you truly understand what is going on in your life. Don't let things that you can't control dictate how you behave every single day. The point is to focus on the things that you can control, and by doing so, you improve your life step by step. Obviously, as we talked about before, don't expect things to happen fast. And as always, don't forget to come back to things later. After a certain amount of time, if you don't go back to things, for example, like Stoicism, you will definitely forget parts of it. So definitely revisit these things and always be sure to look out to focus on the next thing that you can control. And I'll start off with another Marcus Aurelius quote. What is human deserves our affection because it is like us. Now, for example, I want you to picture a scenario where you're standing in line at a restaurant, for example, and then someone really barges in front of you and goes to the front of the line. They're angry and they just can look kind of pissed. Now, if you let your emotions go, then you'll just go berate them and say how you should just wait on the back of the line like everyone else, which isn't wrong, right? But if you think rationally, there is probably a chance that maybe something has happened seriously to them. It's called giving people the benefit of the doubt. The fact of the situation is, if we look at it rationally, we know nothing about the reality of their situation. Maybe recently, or maybe just then, their dad or father just passed away. The thing is, we know nothing about the situation. Maybe they just act like this every day. But if you just go out and use your emotions and berate people, then you're not really considering the reality of the situation and you're not thinking rationally. And you might end up regretting this later. And as we talk about later, is understanding that these people that might seem rude or that we don't genuinely understand the situation aren't all too unfamiliar. Maybe you've had those days where it just feels like your world is crumbling down and things aren't going your way. So you just want to hurry up and get some food and hope this day is all over with. And as we talk about later, is understanding that we humans are so alike. What is human deserves affection because it is like us. We've all been there and we probably all will. The thing is that treating other people like these guys are weird or rude is kind of hypocritical, because we've also had those days where we just want to do the same thing as well. It's about treating other people with kindness, understanding and sympathizing with them because we are alike. We've all experienced these days before. And treating other people like crap isn't really going to help them, because we know that we wouldn't want to treat ourselves with crap if we had the same day as well. And now we're into accepting others. It's understanding that most things in life we can't really control, one of them being friends. Emotionally, we want friends to always be there for us. We want them to always agree with us, but we know in rationale that this isn't always the case. We have shitty days and our friends also do it as well. So expecting them to always be perfect every day is pretty unrealistic. And it's also accepting that angry people or annoying people at school will just be that way. We can't really change them. The only people who can change them are themselves. And since we don't control that, putting emotional energy or even any energy into focusing on them is pretty much wasted, because that doesn't result in anything. Because these annoying people can't be controlled, then if we can't control them, then there's no point in putting effort into that. And so, as a result of this, ignoring these people or kind of moving or not taking their words seriously is the best approach, because at the end of the day, it's accepting these people. These people who may be annoying or angry, that's just who they are. And although they do have chances to change, we can't change them. And so if we can't change them, we shouldn't really put too much energy and effort towards those people. And it's remembering that when it comes down to it, it's understanding that you always have a choice. Other people can look down on you, get angry at you for no reason, or just be straight up mad at you. But the point is, these are people you can't control. Their lives are full of things that we have absolutely no idea about, and trying to fix them into our point of view is pretty unrealistic. And obviously that is the emotional side of things. When you look at it in a rational sense, it's understanding that these guys we have absolutely no idea what has been happening in their lives. They have probably gone through a hell of a lot more stuff than you think that you have, and trying to understand that stuff, trying to control things you can't control, isn't really worth your time and energy. Instead, improving and focusing on what you can control, which is how you react to people. You always are able to control how you react, no matter in what situation. You are always able to control yourself and understand and think in a rational point of view, not to take their words seriously or to also treat them with kindness. The point is to treat everyone with indifference. When you treat everyone the same way, you not only build trust in them, but you make them feel kind of bad for hurting you in the first place. So, as always, remember that you always have a choice whenever situation. You always have a choice to fight fire with fire, or you can calm the fire down and understand that by focusing on what words that you say, that you can understand that whatever they say doesn't really matter because you can't really control it, and that by focusing on what you want to do and how you want to approach the situation rationally, that these things can be settled down and that you don't really have to take it too seriously or as angry as the other person may be. And now we're on to you never needed anything in return. And it's a very simple concept. When you help someone, you expect to get something back. For example, when you help someone maybe like pick up something, that you expect a thank you, or when you do someone a favor, you expect them to give you something back. And when they don't, you feel kind of robbed, like they should have given me something back. And I really like Marcus Aurelius' quote when he says, "So what if other people hurt me? That's their problem. Their characters and actions are not mine." It's using rationale again over emotion. Emotionally, we feel like that our experiences should be understood by others. In our experiences, that when we give something, that we always get something back. But as we know through rationale, maybe the other person forgot today. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Or maybe in their own experiences that they never really had an idea of thanking others. The problem is we emotionally feel like that our own experiences, the things that we've gone through in life, should be understood by everyone else. That everyone should understand our lives and our priorities. But rationally, we understand that some people forget sometimes, people have hard days, and more importantly, we can control our actions. Other people will do what other people do best, and we don't really control those things. So focus on how you react, because isn't it even better that you stay calm and cool when you help someone else instead of getting angry at them? And into removing social media and all these distractions you don't genuinely care about, that you realize the act of helping someone, even if they don't give you anything back, is almost just as worthy and really just as beautiful. Remember, happiness is something that you can't see, it's something that you feel. Such as this video series. I don't really want anything from you guys. I'm doing this because I want to help you. The act of helping someone, of improving someone's life, is something that is way, way better than getting something from someone else just because you help them. The thing is that when you remove these things you don't genuinely care about, you find that there are a lot of things in life that you can find happiness in, such as helping others. Helping others is such a big one because not only do you not want anything back, but the fact that you are able to improve someone's life, that you are able to improve your own character and actions is infinitely better than what someone else could have given you in return. And now we're on to, I think, the most important part of the video, which is understanding that, yes, rationale should be used very, very often, way more than emotions, but sometimes you should use emotions in mediation as well. And I'll kind of start this off with a quote from Marcus Aurelius, which is a sense of when to push and when to back off. For example, if you're talking about like gossip or whatever everyone's opinions about you are, you can't really control that. So pushing away these things, not caring about the things you can't control is very obvious. And you don't really have to care about it, you think about it logically, and you don't put too much emotional effort into it. It's like, yeah, I can't really control that. But I remember in the library once, someone just came up to me and he was talking about my sister, and he before he left, he told my sister to kill herself. Now, I was not letting that slide. I'm not going to think logically and be like, yes, he does it. Yes, logically that, yeah, this is just his opinion and I can't control it. But emotionally, I understand this is someone I care about and this is something I'm fighting for. I'm not going to let this go. So I responded, and yeah. The thing is here that you need both. You need both in mediation, and you need one over the other sometimes. Understanding that they are both useful. Emotional is still very, very useful. But sometimes our emotional ideas of caring about the things we can't control. So those are the situations we should avoid. But sometimes, like the ones I talked about, when people are talking about things you genuinely care about or things that are deep to your heart, don't feel like you have to rationally put it away. These things don't feel like that your values are something you need to push away with logic. Emotionally, our values, for example, our family, are things we still care about. Don't think logically if people talk about your family that, oh yeah, it's just their opinion. But also stand up for what you believe in. Obviously, everyone is different. This is just what I believe in. So I think family is still very important. So I'm standing up for that. I'm not rationally thinking that, yes, this is just someone's opinion. But I'm standing up for what I genuinely believe in. So everyone else is different. It's understanding that sometimes we do need a level of emotion in order to make sure that we are, for example, just making sure that other people understand what we feel and that we are being heard, and that these people, for example, just because we can't control them, we need to make sure that they understand that we mean business and that these things aren't funny to talk about. And now we're finally on to meditations. Now, all, if not most of the quotes that I've said throughout this entire video are from this one book. Now, Meditations, as I mentioned before, is written by Marcus Aurelius, but not in the sense that he's the author. This is actually his personal journal, translated by Gregory Hayes. So this is the Gregory Hayes translation. There are many different translations for his journal, but Meditations is basically Marcus Aurelius's personal journal. It was never meant to be published, but here it is. It's also why I encourage you guys to do journaling as well, because he says a lot of insightful stuff in this in his journal here. But you can also say a lot of insightful stuff when you talk to yourself in your journal as well. And I think one of the best parts of Meditations, and as we talk about later, is that Marcus Aurelius, you might be like, okay, Marcus Aurelius, who is this guy? But imagine if I told you this guy was the most powerful person in the entire world from the most powerful empire. This guy was the Roman emperor at the time, one of the last great Roman emperors. And this guy literally could have done anything. He could have gone partying, he could have gone crazy, he could have gone drinking, he could become a dictator. But he decided to be virtuous. He decided to be a stoic. And having that, reading someone who was able to do that, to have the amount of self-discipline to put away all those distractions and write this is just amazing. So most of the quotes in this episode are from Meditations. So obviously, as you know, they are very, very, very good. And obviously, as I'm kind of talking about it, Meditations doesn't really have chapters. As I said before, this is just a man talking to himself on a journal. And I feel like the more you read Meditations, the more you go through and you highlight stuff. He says a lot of insightful things here, and I feel like also with Stoicism, if you want to get better at it, it is also just rereading Meditations, because this book is genuinely beautiful. And when you think about the history, you think about this guy could have done literally anything, but he decided to write a personal journal. It's pretty damn cool. So definitely check out Meditations. This is the Gregory Hayes translation. I think it's great. This is my second reread. I've been highlighting and writing stuff to myself, so it's been amazing. And I do it every evening. So I'm constantly going back over Stoicism. I'm reminding myself of the lessons that I've learned, because after a certain amount of time, you won't have the same freshness from the day you learned it. Part of doing it is understanding and going back to the lessons I've learned, not only from Meditations, but in trying to understand and being more rational in life, putting down the emotions and understanding that when you do these things, that you're able to genuinely live your life better, because you start caring about the things that you should be caring about and not caring about the things that you can't control. Now on to be careful of what you say to others. One of the worst pieces of advice I've heard online is that if you have bad friends or really annoying friends, you should just get rid of them. Obviously, I'm really only half joking here, but I really am really half joking. Because there's a quote that goes along the lines of, the hate you give, the hate you get. The thing to understand here is that if you treat other people like shit, you're going to get shit friends. If you treat other people genuinely, you're going to get genuine friends. You attract the people that fit in with what you believe in. If you just treat other people like crap and you just disrespect them, you're going to get friends that treat you like crap and disrespect you as well. It's very easy to ignore the fact that you have a massive influence over other people, because what you say matters a lot. We often don't think about this step. We often think that it's always some external problem. It's not us. And that's the emotional side again, right? We always think that we're right and our point always stands, that everyone else has to be the problem. But logically and rationally, you have to understand that you have a massive influence over everyone else. What you do obviously affects who you're going to be with and which friends are going to be attracted to you. So, understanding that again, it's about thinking about you, yourself. It's removing social media and all these distractions that you can genuinely think about what you're saying to others at school. For example, just like a random conversation with someone and just really think about the words you're saying to others and the things that you are going to say. For example, that, maybe that this person was really bad or something. These words affect other people, and in turn, they affect whether they want to be with you or not. For example, if you treat other people like crap, some people might move away from you, and then the people who also agree with the things that you're saying will be attracted to you. So if you ever feel like that, you're always surrounded by bad friends, maybe reconsider how you treat them first, because perhaps and probably that is the main problem. And now on to the last part of the video, which is about facing death. Now I know this isn't really the funnest topic to talk about, but I think this is really, really good to come in terms of death. Not only that you were given this life in the first place, which you couldn't control, but death is also something you can't control as well. And since both of them you couldn't really control, there isn't really a point in thinking about it, and it's just really appreciating the life that you have. And I'll start with a quote from Marcus Aurelius. "To pass through this brief life as nature demands, to give it up without complaint, like an olive that ripens and falls, praising its mother, thanking the tree it grew on." Isn't that just beautiful, bro? Thanking the tree it grew on. Now, I'm not going to try and get into religion here, but understanding that we literally don't know who created this world. And trying to find meaning in life and trying to find out who it was doesn't actually have any meaning. It's in finding the meaning in the things you already have in life. And out of all the things we couldn't control in life, all the external things we can't control, for example, the world, the news, we were given life. We were given this opportunity to be here on Earth. The point here is that death, as much as it is scary, is something we can't actually control. So don't be scared over something that you can't control. In fact, it's understanding and appreciating that you were given this life in the first place. Isn't that just beautiful? Out of all the external things that we couldn't control, we were given life. So, before you go and use your emotions to judge others or push your point, take a step back and understand that not all external things are bad. Not all the things we can't control are bad. Just as life, right? This life that we are given is so beautiful, and the fact that we were given in the first place and how lucky we were is pretty unreal. Although we don't know who created it, that doesn't really matter. That doesn't stop us from finding meaning in life or appreciating its beauty. And as Marcus Aurelius says, it's thanking the tree you grew on. It's thanking this world that you have, and it's thanking the things and important things around you, such as family and friends. These are the things that we care about at the end, and although death is always there waiting for us, as we talk about later, it's greeting it like an old friend. We always know it's going to happen, and it's accepting the fact that we can't control some things in the world. We don't need to control, we don't need to be scared of death. We know it's going to happen. So accept it like an old friend, because at the end of the day, the fact that we were given this life is already pretty cool. And for this next part about death, I'm just going to let Marcus Aurelius do what he does best. That the longest lived and those who will die the soonest lose the same thing. The present is all they can give up, since that is all you have. And what you do not have, you cannot lose. For you cannot lose either the past or the future. How could you lose what you don't have? I think I remember a quote from somewhere that went along the lines of, it's not about the amount of years in your life, it's about the amount of life in your years. The thing is, then again, we can't control how much time we have in the future. We can't control how old we will be when we die. But we can control what we do every day. Whether we work to something we genuinely care about, or whether we work to something we don't care about in the end. That is what we control. We can't control if we die tomorrow or maybe in a week or something. The point is, we can control what we do. Our actions and our behaviors, we can control that. We can work to something we genuinely care about, and when we look at the end of life, and when we are at the end of life, we can look back and say, I did something I genuinely care about. Or you can do something you genuinely don't care about, and at the end of your life, you can look back and say, I really just hated the things, I regret the things I was doing. The thing is, it doesn't matter if you die tomorrow or the week after. The point is, it's reflecting on the things that you did in life. You don't have to have 1 year or even 5 days to do this, to do something you genuinely want to. Doing something you genuinely want to is just doing it. It doesn't matter if you only had 5 days or you had 1 year. the thing is, you did something you genuinely wanted to, even if you had only a short time. It's in appreciating the things that you already have, because that's what all you've been given. You can't control if you had more life or you have less, but it's the things that you have that you can appreciate and find joy in. Whether you did something you genuinely wanted to or not is yours to control. That's what you have to understand. You can't control how much longer you'll live, but you can control whether you work to something you genuinely care about or you work to something you genuinely don't. And as we near the end of this episode, I have another quote from the GOAT, Marcus Aurelius. And if others don't acknowledge it, this life lived with simplicity, humility, cheerfulness, he doesn't resent them for it and isn't deterred from following the road where it leads to the end of life. An end to be approached in purity, in sincerity, in acceptance, in peaceful unity with what must be. And although the ending of that is quite vague, for the past 1.5 years, I've been following my own road, splitting myself from everyone else and doing my own thing. On the outside, maybe you watching this probably have been thinking that I'm probably weird or I'm this or that. The thing is, I don't resent you for it. People will do what people do best, and they will say whatever their heart desires based off just the surface level of other people's lives. No one else understands my life except me. And the path I've been following for the past 1.5 years is still a path I still want to continue on for the rest of my life. The point is that I don't resent people for doing these things or these external things that I can't control, because they don't really understand my life, and that's completely fine. The point is, don't let other people or these external things you can't control determine what you do. Only you truly know whether you're truly happy, and for me, I want to continue going this road. Your job isn't to prove to other people or show other people through Instagram posts or images or really anything, because remember, happiness is something you feel, not something you see. Your job isn't to prove to everybody that your life is perfect, because if you're doing that, it doesn't really show that, because you're just making sure you're trying to show everyone else rather than yourself. Now, the understanding here is that your job isn't to prove it to anyone else, it's only to prove it to yourself. I don't have to show everyone that my life is genuine or something, because you can't really do that. It's to make sure that the feeling you have in your heart, deep down inside, is something that is happy. Something that wants to continue going on this road you're going on, or maybe you need to switch roads and switch what you're doing. The point is that you can't really substitute happiness for anything else. No amount of clothes you wear, no amount of Instagram posts, or the amount of comments you do, or amount of YouTube videos you watch will substitute for that. You have to make sure that you're genuinely happy yourself. Don't let other people dictate that, or let other people sway you with their opinions, because they really know nothing about you. I mean, did you believe last term that I knew all this information? Probably not. Probably the complete opposite, to be honest. So, as we kind of end off this episode here, that's just kind of what I want to give you. Stoicism, of course, is something very, very important, and I feel like it's really, really, really useful. But as I kind of go into the next section here, it's understanding that I don't want to interrupt what you're doing right now. Maybe you want to these things are really good. For example, Stoicism, fear and courage, being yourself, mind mapping. These things are all great. The things that I've taught you over the past few episodes. But don't be swayed by it. I want you to continue doing what you're doing right now, because these things you can do anytime in the future. As like in episode 2, as we talk about improving/planning, is understanding what is most important right now. Yes, these things are very important and very useful, but maybe you can leave Stoicism for later, maybe after HSC. So focus on the path you're going on right now, or if you really, really find that you need to switch paths, then be my guest. Of course, only you understand your life, so make that determination by yourself. Don't let other people sway your opinion. And now, here we are at the end of the episode, and I'm going to leave you, coincidentally, with the very end of Meditations. So Marcus Aurelius' personal journal, and coincidentally, it's about death. And I think this is really, really beautiful. So before we get into that, I just want to say, definitely check out Meditations, the Gregory Hay translation. It is really, really good. But let's go. You've lived as a citizen in a great city, 5 years or 100. What's the difference? The laws make no distinction. And to be sent away from it, not by a tyrant or a dishonest judge, but by nature who first invited you in, why is that so terrible? Like the impresario bringing down the curtains on an actor. But I've only gotten through 3 acts. Yes, this will be a drama in 3 acts. The length fixed by the power that directed your creation, and now directs your dissolution. Neither was yours to determine. So, make your exit with grace, the same grace shown to you.